My topic is adaptive user interface in games when artificial intelligence meets user experience. Let me talk on aim assist now. For instance, I'm going to use Free Fire and Farlight as an example. When I play Free Fire and Farlight, I know I'm not that good at aiming. So, but when I'm playing the game, if an enemy is approaching and I turn around, once I turn around, the crosshair locks in on the enemy. All I have to do is just to press the shoot button and I eliminate the enemy. So I know that I'm not that good. So I kept wondering what was, I know it was the system, but I don't really know what was doing that for me. So I had to make some research. That was how I came about what adaptive GI was, and I understood that that particular feature was called aim assist. So it adjusts based on the efficiency of the player, right? Then another feature is tutorials that appear only when you need them. I'm going to use runner game as an example now. The same runner game. Like when you're running in a runner game and keep hitting obstacles, you die like 3 times. You keep dying. The game is going to observe that you don't know what to do. So it's going to show you a hint. So that's the tutorial that appears when you're using. Now, some games that have these adaptive AI features in the real world. Games like Forza Horizon, PUBG Mobile, Apex Legend, Free Fire, Starlight, The Last of Us 2. Okay, The Last of Us 2 now is like the beacon of adaptive UI because they have up to 60 accessibility options and adaptive UI features. They didn't just arrive at these 60 accessibility options. This came about because a player reached out to them through email complaining about how he couldn't get past a particular stage in Uncharted 2. All right, these people that created on Last of Us 2 are the same people that created Uncharted, and that's Naughty Dog Studio. So this mail showed the team that worked on Uncharted 2 and also worked on Last of Us 2 that gameplay is not a one size fits all. To them, there was a hint in that particular stage the player was complaining about that they felt was supposed to help every player out there get across that stage, but this wasn't so. So with this mail they got, they had to go back to the drawing board because they are working on the Last of Us 2 at that moment. So they had to go back, redraft what they were doing, and try to incorporate accessibility options and adaptive AI features that would help player have engaging and personalized gameplay. That way, whatever your disability is or your ability or your impairments, you have a gameplay that is engaging and equitable for everyone. Okay, so this was coined from an interview with Naughty Dog Studio. So this says this was from the lead gameplay designer Emilia Shark. She says Naughty Dog's real achievement in The Last of Us 2 is showing that true accessibility comes from customization. That is, giving players enough options to create an incapable experience that suits their needs instead of relying on simple difficulty modes or one size fits all solution. What this basically means is that the same thing I said on the other slide was that gameplay is not a one size fits all because we have different impairments. There are people that have visual impairments that need broader, they need broader text, like bigger text or stronger contrast to better see what's going on the game. So with this, she said that gameplay is not a one size fits all. So whenever you're creating a game, you should have it in mind that that TVR should be there, whether it's in form of accessibility options, that's increasing the contrast of the game or increasing the text so that the player could better understand what's going on. So where does AI actually come in? AI is the power behind adaptive AI. It's it's the brain power. It's what powers the whole adaptive AI features in there. So what this does is what AI does, that artificial intelligence, is that it observes the game. It observes the player as the player is playing and gathers data. It does this by learning the player's preference, by tracking patterns, by grouping players by behavior, predicting frustrations, and recommending UI states. This recommending of UI states could be of understanding context of what's going on in the game. Let's say, for instance, during camp exploration, the player is going around picking up items in the game, just exploring the environment. The UI is going to understand that the player needs guidance. So it's going to highlight buttons of the items around so that the player can easily see them and pick up. So this works by just observing the player and adapting the user interface in real time to what's going on in the game. Designing for adaptation. This is for designers and developers in the house that want to start creating the adaptive UI in mind. Adaptive UI is a powerful tool, but it should be handled with care. So there are a few key steps I'm going to name. I'm going to list that developers and designers should consider when creating for adaptive UI. First, you have to start with player data. This is not just looking at what the player is clicking. This is trying to understand what the player does and why they do it. This is asking questions like, why does the player keep missing shots? They keep running away from enemies? Do they get stuck at a particular place for a long time? So what this means is that the system is trying to understand why the player does what they do. It's just like when a teacher gives a classwork to students. Teacher sits down and watches the students do the homework because teacher is trying to know what the student understands. And another key point is don't surprise the player. So you should keep consistency. Not when a player comes back to play the game, UI has changed a lot that it gets confusing for the player. Right. So what this means is that even if there are supposed to be changes because it's adaptive UI, but it shouldn't be so much that it confuses the player. Right. Even if you make the changes, there should be a notification letting the player know that okay, this changed up a bit and this is why. So for instance, a quick tip was added because you failed 3 times. This notification now is going to help the player know that a quick tip was added inside the game. So as you're playing and this quick tip comes up, it's not going to jump at them because it's expected. They were notified about it. Another key point to consider, always give players the control. It's not everyone that wants easy gameplay. They are pro gamers, they are barbers in games, so that when you do this adaptive UI thing, some people might find it annoying because they are pro gamers. So there should be an option to turn off or turn on depending on how the player wants to play the game. And another key point, adapt from patterns, not one-time behavior. Like I'm going to use run again. See that I told you guys I'm going to use that running game so much. So yeah, I'm going to use the runner game here as an example again. When a player keeps running into obstacles like 3 times, you notice when I gave that example before I said 3 times. So AI is supposed to track patterns, not just one time failure. So in a runner game, when the player keeps hitting the obstacle and fails like 3 times, the game is going to show the player a hint. That hint is that tutorial that as sorry, is that pattern that it observes to show that the player is dying. It tracks the pattern and gives solution to that. So next point, test with different player types. As designers, as we are building, we have to test our games with real players out there to better observe how they react when playing the games. The UI changes frustrate them? Are they happy with the changes made? And also, we should also have in mind that there are different players out there. Like I mentioned in the second point, that some adaptive AI features you might find helpful for early gamers or new gamers might not be helpful for pro gamers. They might find it annoying. So know your players and test them according to how you play. Another key point, keep accessibility in mind. As you're creating accessibility, you incorporate into your game shouldn't break the UI. Let's say the border texting I talked about, it should be in a way that it scales. If the player increases the font size, it shouldn't break the UI. The UI should still look good, not because the text is bolder, the UI will not look ugly. So you should keep accessibility in mind and also let it not break the design interface of the game. So this is called from that same interview with Naughty Dog Studio. In an interview with The Verge, lead gameplay designer Emilia Shat said that the studio's very simple plan for accessibility was sparked by a player who couldn't complete Uncharted. Okay, so this just ties to having a community around your game. As you build your game, you should have a community. This way, you could get honest feedback from your players. Imagine if on Naughty Dog Studio they have a community and they weren't easily reachable. That mail wouldn't have gotten to them and they wouldn't have incorporated 60 accessibility features and adaptive UI, 60 accessibility options and adaptive UI features that made their game win an award because of how good um the Last of Us 2 was. It was so good that Game Award had to create a new category for them. And that award is called Innovation in Accessibility. And The Last of Us 2 is what games use as inspiration to gather data and what to do on their games that they are building. So what to tie all this together, what it just means is that have a good community around your game, have an open and honest community so that they can give feedbacks and not be scared of what to say or not even being reachable. Because at the end of the day, you're building for players out there. So when you have an enclosed team that no one knows what is going on, you just close off with you and your team you're building. Nobody knows what's going on. There's no player to guess what you're doing. So at the end of the day, when you launch or release the game and players play, they might not even like it. So all the efforts you and your team put in, like just made it. So it's good to have a community around your game. But the future of adaptive UI in games. In the near future, we are looking at having games that have we already have this games that have context driven HUDs. We already have this. There are games that have this already, but in the near future, most games are going to have this. So what does this context driven HUD mean? It means user interface that changes to what is going on, that changes or adapts to what is happening in the game in real time. Let's say, for instance, during combat, during combat, the player needs attention. So the UI understands that the player needs full attention when during combat. So it's going to fade out unnecessary elements like the help and sound button and leave the critical buttons needed, like the combat button, the health, the stamina, and the ammo count. So it's going to leave this so the player could focus and take fast decisions, right? So another feature that is going to see in the future is multi-device adaptation. The player's UI preference stays consistent across every device they use. So what this basically means is that let's say a player is left-handed and in the normal battle royale games, the navigation control is on the left and the combat button is on the right. So someone that is left-handed is going to switch this up and make the combat buttons to be on the left, then the navigation control on the right. So this particular player now, when he switches devices and switches to console or PC, this UI is going to follow him. Let's say him. It's going to follow him to that device or that screen. It's going to adapt to his baseline. Another feature is biometric aware interfaces. Sorry, excuse. This is games and integrating data from facial expression, heart rate, stress level. So let's say a horror game that is linked to your smartwatch, right? So when your blood pressure or your heart rate goes up, it deduces that your stress level is going up. So it's going to recommend, let's say, no, telling you to leave the game is extreme. It's going to recommend you leaving the game or adjust the difficulty based on how your heart rate is going up. So all this does is anyway, this is already it's not as if this is in the future. This is already being done by some indie studios, but it's still in research. So it's not generally used by a lot of games. So together, all these features will make games more immersive, more accessible, and personalized than ever before. So, my final thoughts. Adaptive user interface is not just a fancy name, it's not a fancy technology out there that is just there to make me. It's the bridge between artificial intelligence and human centered design. So, when you combine good user experience, player data, player behavior, and artificial intelligence, you create a game that feels alive, feels personal, and feels engaging for a player. So, in a world where attention spans are very small. A game that understands the player, that the player feels an emotional connection to, is gold and is going to set you apart in the market. In a personalized interface now is going to set you apart from every other competitor out there. Imagine a game, it's a game being created in Nigeria. Most of the games in Nigeria just have the traditional static design interface. So if your game has adaptive UI that adapts what is going on in the game, adapts to the player, it's going to set you apart from every other games out there, especially in Nigeria. So yeah, articles for further research. So if you want to read up on this or you're building a game and you want to still make some further research on different adaptive UI features to incorporate into your game, you could maybe take a picture of this or you could reach out to me on my social handles and I'm going to send this to you. So my social handles on the next slide. So these are my social handles. Can send me a message on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Gmail. So I hope you've learned something about adaptive UI, even if it's not much, just a bit. You understand what adaptive UI is. So when you see it in a game you're playing, you understand what is going on. That's adaptive UI. It's not just the system being merciful. It has a name. It's adaptive UI feature. So thank you everyone for listening.